Way back when, in 1978, there was a little manga called Space Adventure Cobra, and it was a real kitchen sink. Author Buichi Terasawa liked to toss whatever the hell he had just seen at the movie theater into his manga, and it worked surprisingly well. Everything from James Bond to Barbarella, and especially Osamu Tezuka, who Terasawa had worked under, ended up in the big blender that was the manga version of Space Adventure Cobra. And boy does it show. So in 1982, once they had enough material, they created Space Adventure Cobra, the movie, and from the looks of it, they nailed what Terasawa was working towards. The film focuses on the first arc of the manga, featuring Cobra and the Royal Sisters, and their battle against Crystal Boy, something between a mafia boss and a cybernetic zombie. That's about all there is to really say about this plot, because this is the weirdest kind of pulp sci-fi, and you know what? It's not that bad. It's a nice blend of spaghetti western and wandering swordsman sort of thing, and that's fairly rare these days. So, what do you want to know about Cobra? Well, for starters, he's basically the inspiration for Vash the Stampede, Dante from Devil May Cry, and a whole lot of other doofy but dangerous action characters. He's got a cool ship and a sassy robot lady to pilot it for him, named Lady Armoroid. Don't think about it too hard, kids. He's packing a .44 despite it being the far future, and he's a total booty hound. He's kind of like Dirty Harry meets James Bond. Sadly, there's not a whole lot more to say about Cobra as a character, and it's not because he's a badly written one, but because part of his backstory says that he changed his face and wiped his memories. And, well, it's kind of hard to have a backstory when you just sort of delete it before the show starts. It makes it easier to let things happen to Cobra and introduce more baddies as it goes along. In this case, it serves as just a catalyst for the plot, as Cobra takes a shine to a pretty bounty huntress in a bar and ends up roped into a big galaxy-spanning kerfuffle. Said huntress, whose name is Jane, and clearly inspired by Jane Fonda and Barbarella, is initially skeptical that this round-faced goon is actually Cobra, but after he saves her bacon from a decapitated head out for revenge, she relents. What follows is, in essence, a very long chase scene, punctuated occasionally by psychedelic dream sequences and bouts of melancholy. This movie knows who it's cribbing from, and isn't afraid in the slightest to show it off. If you've seen the movie Crank, it's in a similar vein to that. Jane isn't human, by the way, or at least not an Earthling. She's from a wandering planet that has some sort of treasure hiding on it, and everybody and their sister, literally in this case, wants their hands on it. She decides out of the blue that she loves Cobra and wants to drag his dopey ass on a mission to go and rescue her other sisters, and then go back to her planet. This also means that word has reached the head of the Pirate Guild Mafia bad guy group, depending on what version you're watching, who is a cyborg named Crystal Boy.
Oh, it's Crystal Boy. Oh yeah, he's a big boy. Oh yeah, he's a big brony boy.
Now that's what the official subs say, but what Terasawa says is that it's actually Crystal Bowie, or Crystal Bowie, depending on if it's the knife or the singer. Basically, what Crystal Bowie does is stand around being fabulous like he's some sort of prototype Dio Brando. Oh, and he's immune to lasers, which includes Cobra's Psycho Gun attack, which is built into his arm. So, yeah, he's big trouble. But it's kind of hard to take him seriously considering that he's Slim Goodbody mixed with Darth Vader, though he is every bit as creepy as that sounds. So the first thing that Cobra does after leaving the planet he was chilling out in is to have a big old trip through space, and I mean that in both ways. The opening sequence itself seems to love psychedelic visuals, and a lot of the backgrounds seem cribbed from kind of pulpy, dodgy sci-fi novel covers. By the time that this movie was produced, psychedelic visuals were all out of vogue anyway, which makes it an odd choice. From there we go to a prison planet where Cobra and Jane fight some zombies and go break into a prison ship, which just happens to have Crystal Bowie on it. After an exciting but somewhat overlong chase scene, Crystal Bowie makes off with Jane's sister Catherine, who is identical to her in basically all ways except her hair is a different color. And she's evil. Jane doesn't have a great time of it, needless to say. The third act, out of 4, because this movie has some weird pacing issues, takes place on a snow world, and by this point, I'll admit, I got a little punchy. This movie just keeps rolling onwards, and that put me in a weird mood while I was watching it. And here are the results. The Siberian puss slayer emerges from his long hibernation, prepared to hunt his prey once more. His prey of choice, the latex-clad snow bunny, is plentiful this season. However, if this Siberian puss slayer is unable to procure sustenance for the coming winter, he will surely starve. With apologies to Richard Attenborough. This movie feels a lot longer than it actually is because it just keeps going and going and going and moves from location to location without a whole ton of explanation, backstory, or, frankly, interest. It's kind of what the base idea of Cobra is, I suppose. It's more just kind of pulp sci-fi where women get naked a lot and shooty bang bang lasers happen. But now that Jane is dead, she's psychically attuned her sister Dominique to fall in love with Cobra. Again, don't think too hard about it because you'll think it's weird. Also, you may notice that all these ladies looked like they were copy-pasted from each other. Well, let's just say that Terasawa knew what kind of lady he liked to draw, if nothing else. It must make shopping for clothing in this universe really easy. It's just form-fitting bodysuits across the board. The Siberian puss lair has cornered a latex-clad snow bunny in its cove and immediately begins doing an elaborate mating dance in an attempt to woo her. However, his efforts are clumsy and stupid-looking. The snow bunny may not be interested if he does not get his shit together. However, what's this? It appears that the snow bunny is receptive after all. The puss slayer, unable to finish his mating dance, now appears to be completely out of his element. So now that Crystal Boy has tracked Cobra down, it's time to kill another royal sister, leaving Catherine as the last one. And from there, it's a race to the wandering planet to see who will get the treasure before then. Also, this little weirdo in a bubble shows up intermittently to stare and offer advice. Don't mind me, I'm just here for the show. At this point, I'm sure you can figure out what happens from here on out, but that's not to say that it's an uninteresting movie. It's certainly peculiar, certainly a product of its time, but it's not bad in any way, shape, or form. It's kind of interesting and certainly kept me entertained. Though I will say that I showed it to a certain Arcata a few years ago and he fell asleep in the middle of it. Either that says something about me or something about him, and I'm not sure which is better. But at the same time, you know me, I love me my old-ass anime, and you know what? That was a lot of fun. It was ported over by a whole bunch of people over the years, but it's currently being released by Eastern Star, and it's well worth the price tag for the entertainment you'll get out of it. Now, here's where the downer happens. The dub is exactly what you would expect for something of this age. And the subtitles are, shall we say, lacking. And I would bet dollars to donuts that the folks who got their hands on it first just sort of slid the masters over to Eastern Star and they just threw it on a DVD. Which means that you have some pretty egregious spelling errors, you have some weird stuff happening with the subtitles, and better yet, they refer to Lady Armoroid as Lady Andromeda in the subs, even though Lady Armoroid isn't in it very much, which was the name of the character as it was changed for the Streamline Pictures dub. So, it's got some issues. But at the same point, what do you expect from something that's older than most of my audience right now? It's good, kinda dirty, pulpy fun. And if you are actually interested in more Cobra after you watch this movie, I would recommend picking up the Nozomi Entertainment release of the original series, which also came out in 1982. And if you're still hooked, there was an OVA that came out in 2008 that I may touch on at some point. Unfortunately, if there's one big tragedy to this movie, it's that it doesn't have the really bitchin' theme song from the original series in it. So in the interest of making sure that people hear it, hit it, maestro.